Things work.
What's Gerardo up to? Let's see. Is this WoW? No, it's the Duolingo.
Alright, so never done anything like this before. I don't know if I will again. Maybe I will. I don't know. Hello, welcome. This is what I suppose I could call a support workshop. Mostly it's just going to be me rambling a lot about the role of support. So I guess I could start from the top here. Generally, when you see a real comp team, you're going to see that they have either 1 or 2 supports. Depends on the meta, but almost never you're going to see them have 0. And
yeah,
in some worlds you might wonder, like, why don't they take like another roamer? Why don't they play like 2 duelists, 3 roamers, and they just win every team fight and roll over to the next one and just keep winning? And generally the spirit of it, I should stop jumping around. The spirit of support is that they minimize volatility in a team fight. They don't do much damage, they don't do much else other than that. They can't really contribute to kills very well, but they minimize the amount of things that go wrong, and they stabilize a battlefield. What that's going to end up looking like is, I don't know if you've ever played unranked, and each team just had like 5 full nuclear, like really quick, really aggressive roamers, and every fight that ever happens on the entire map is like a down fight, a down race. That is not conducive to winning like monthlies.
True.
Generally, the best way to play competitive Guild Wars 2, and really any competitive game, is to minimize volatility in every respect. So, for instance, you can see people playing the leaderboards in a specific way, queuing at specific times, doing with specific people on specific builds. I know there was once, there might still be a strategy where you both queue as a specific class you don't want to see. And then you both swap off as soon as you get into a game so that it can't be in your ranked match, but it might be on the other team. So like when Mesmer was really bad, they used to do that. They would both queue as Mesmer and then swap off immediately.
We don't condone it.
Yeah, but that is part of like the meta, in quotations, of how to do things well, I guess. That happens on that level all the way down to what roles you're playing. And generally, the role of support is to reduce the volatility of your team fights as much as possible. Generally, in Conquest, right, you never want to fight a fair fight for too long. Or if ever, really. If you want to maybe have an outnumbered against you and you start to hold that as long as you can and you try to get more map control with the rest of your team, or maybe you crash on a fight. You don't want to fight like the honorable 2v2 or 1v1 unless it benefits you in some way. You need to gain advantage somehow. The way supports do that is through a few ways, depends on the profession. Generally, supports are going to be healers. Like, that's kind of a given. This game was originally designed, as some of you might know, in the core days without a trinity at all. They tried to do something special. They tried to make it so that every class had its own, self-sustain. Any sufficiently skilled player can sustain themselves and then keep going in full Berserker gear. So you had a long time where everyone was just running Berserker because everything else sucked. And then around Heart of Thorns, they went, this actually is awful. And then they added the Trinity back. But generally, you're going to still find that a lot of classes in this game have their own self-sustain, and there are certain builds, usually leaning towards duelist, that also have a lot of sustain. But you can't really win fights very well if all of you are just like slapping each other with wet noodles the whole time. You need a lot of damage to punch through some metas. And when there's a lot of damage, sometimes you can't prevent yourself from getting bursted down, CC'd 8 times in a row. You need someone who's supporting. Effective health is whatever health you got, whatever health you're allowed to heal, and whatever health the support's basically giving you. And you have to kind of keep in mind Whenever you're getting bursted by the enemy team, they have a limited number of buttons as well. So how they hold it or how they whiff those are very important. And how a support reacts and negates those buttons is very important as well. But healing isn't really... Sometimes healing isn't really very high up on the list at all in regards to what a support can do. There are a lot of classes that have, in quotation, support builds that really just don't get much done. They're missing a lot of more important pieces than just having a lot of green numbers. Like Heal Scrapper, for instance, has some of the pieces scattered around in the wrong way. They have a lot of healing. Druid does too, but they just don't have the right tools to be able to survive in the environment that other supports might do right now. In addition to that, healers or supports want to have a lot of cleanse. And cleansing isn't like necessarily locked onto supports. I know Duelist Tempest honestly cleanse more than the support versions of them, but generally cleanse is mostly just like potential health going back up. It's just a different form of healing coming from a different damage source. And also, if your team is perma-chilled, perma-immobilized, it's going to be a huge problem chasing kills, not getting killed.
Yeah.
The third one, a little more esoteric. I think crowd control is a very important part of playing a support. In this game, generally, you're going to see most weapons, almost every weapon, has a form of crowd control. That's kind of why people get really upset at like getting stunned 8 times in a row, because everybody on the team has 2 or 3 that are just throwing at you at once. But those are kind of to secure bursts by yourself, right? Like if a Reaper knocks you down, they're going to immediately try to do their big skills into you. A support CCing kind of means a bit different of things when you're in a team fight. Supports don't have much burst. They really don't have much damage at all. There was Spear Chrono for a little while, but they really didn't like Spear being broken on everything else. So they kind of took that away from it a bit. Generally, supports are going to do the least damage on the team, or at least they should. So their crowd control is for your team to either peel out or for them to hit their bursts. It's a lot about lockdown. And with things like Staff Ellie, you have a big giant stun field. That's a 2-second stun. You have the stupid fucking wall that everyone hates, right? Very important kind of skill. Completely shut down area. If your teammate's running away, they have to run through that. If they don't have stab, they can't get them. You know, you have immobilize that peels for your teammates still, or if you say call it out, say I'm about to immobilize this guy, you hit an aftershock and a shockwave, and then your scrapper comes up and doesn't even need their blast gyro. They can just immediately grenade barrage them. That's one button saved, right? These buttons are saving your teammates' buttons, which they can use during their burst later, because obviously you can't burst for them. They know when they're doing their CC skills best. And then supports give boons. They give a lot of boons. They give the most important boons, if possible. There are, of course, builds and specs and classes that can give their teammates boons as well. Different boons, maybe a lot of might, maybe fury. Maybe they're good at regen. Maybe they're like a bunker druid. Or maybe they give Aegis just passively, like if it was an offensive firebrand build or something. They give a lot of passive benefits to your teammates. But what a support's doing with boons is arguably more important because they're focusing on giving it to you specifically. And largely, that involves stability. Stability is basically the most important boon in Conquest. Alacrity is great. Quickness, if you can give it, if you can get it, also great. Swiftness is very important. You know, regen, vigor, all those things are great. 25 stacks of might. But if you get stunned And you can't do your burst or you get bursted. Wasn't really any point in any of that. You can't dodge when you're stunned. You can't do most of your skills when you're stunned unless they're instant cast. It's really just stability that makes the world go around. You cast stability at the beginning of fights preemptively. Like, you don't want your team to get stunned by their support when they're trying to start bursting, or you don't want them to get locked down. Your stability stops your team from eating shit, basically. And generally the best supports have an on-demand, very quick stability application for their team. And part of the reason why Tempests are still on the top of the charts is because they have a lot of it. Quite a bit. But also, you know, other boons are important too. Regen, that's coming off of very powerful healing power stats, is a rare and great thing. You can give plenty of might to your team. You're giving out vigor. Part of also what makes Tempest great is that it gives out endurance, specifically because of a trait. So it's giving your team free dodges, which is a lot of damage mitigation. Another very important boon is protection. Most supports aren't going to make it very far unless they give out protection. That is what's going to mitigate a lot of the damage that's going to be done to your team. Even better than healing 4,000 health is preventing 3,000 damage from being done, basically. And especially if it's an instant cast, very quick application of protection. Basically, if your teammate is being bursted here and you're over here, you give them prot. That is a huge deal. You're reducing, if they're taking 12,000 damage, they only take like 9,000 now. And you can just heal them up the rest of the way back up. A lot of builds don't have self-prot application, or at least not very much of it. There are some that do, but obviously there are outliers. There's a lot of builds in this game. And lastly, probably sometimes the most important, some supports have command revives. Very important turning point in a team fight is if you get a kill or they get a kill on one of your guys, you're going to want to have a way to revive them without putting yourself in severe danger. You can always threaten, and you should always try to threaten the hand res, but a lot of the time you're not going to get the chance to do that. So that's why you have like Signet of Mercy, you have Glyph of Renewal. Sometimes you have modified hand reses. Basically, if it ever becomes a 4v5, the team fight is lost and you have to peel out there and you lose map control and everything just starts to tumble down from there. And you'll see in a lot of really high like skill games a single kill swinging 200, 300 points in a game because of how hard they can hold that map control and for how long they can hold it. So it's pretty important. But just having all those skills and having the boons and the stability and whatnot doesn't just make a support work. Playing a support is very different than playing a duelist, than playing a DPS, than playing a roamer. Though it is a little bit of all of those, except DPS. Supports are basically a form of bunker. They're a high priority target. They like to keep themselves alive because everything they do affects them first and then heals their team. So they can't like whiff. They usually can't whiff like a heal. Like I'm gonna get hit with every part of Wash Away the Pain. That's a lot of healing. And then I get this personal shield and more of it. But the thing that kind of balances supports is the fact that a lot of their healing is increased outgoing. They don't get most of those benefits. But as a support, your job is to team fight. If you're a support and you're not healing anyone, you're not stabilizing any fight, you're not doing anything. You should be where the enemy damage is, or where you need to stop a kill from happening on your team. Let's see. A lot of that, as I've described previously, is positional. Usually as a support, you don't want to stand where the cleave is happening, but you want to stand in a way where you can provide support or kite out in any given moment. Supports like Tempest, with a long 1200 range, huge radius weapon, will do very well at that. Things like Chronomancers, a little bit less so. A lot of their healing and support is point blank next to them where those shatters are happening. And sometimes they have, you know, rifle bursts or whatever, but it's not quite as reliable. I mean, but generally what's that's just to say is that you want to be in a certain place in a team fight in any one time where you can save someone's life or get the hell out of there. Let's see. Part of support, since you're not damaged, really, you don't have to worry about focusing targets as much. You should be putting damage into them when possible, but you should be prioritizing your own safety. If you are the target of the enemy and you need to kite out, it's very important that you know the map well enough that you can figure out how to get away from people when the time comes. Because if a support crumbles, the entire team fight will crumble very shortly afterwards, especially if their support is also in the team fight.
True.
Let's see. You have a lot of CC to do it as a support. Most of the time you have weapons that kind of enable you to do that. Going to no port spots, also very important, especially in a meta where thieves or revenants are quite prevalent. You're going to want to be somewhere they can't instantly jump to you. And you also, not just kiting away, you also want to keep track of where your team is. Because in a perfect situation, your team will be able to kite for you. They will be the ones peeling for you, is what I mean. So if your team's on the node, and you're about to get dove by 3 people, in some cases, depending on what buttons you have or where your team is and what they're doing, you want to run away. You want to try to get to a different teammate, or you want to try to get to a no port, some other difficult spot where you can shake off the pressure, or you want to run towards your team so that they can come and meet you, and they can give whatever support they give. They counter pressure. You don't give much counter pressure support, so you can't really scare off the thief as well by smacking them in the face. They're just gonna keep hitting you and then you die. But also your team needs to know to run towards you, and you need to know when to run towards them. And it's a very fine line in a team fight between keeping safe and keeping your allies safe. Part of that is, let's see. Right. Part of that is knowing the mindset of your team, knowing where they want to be, and that's part of the reason why rank sucks, is you have very little control over your teammates and you have very little communication that you can do with them. So say you have a Hollowsmith on the point and they went through their hard light shield or whatever, I forget it's called. They're out of stuff. They're out of stun breaks. They're about to get bursted. They see him coming in. They need to get towards you and you need to get towards them, and you need to give them stability to help them peel out or whatever. If you can't communicate that to them and they can't to you, then it all just falls apart. But that's also why they can't always do that. You need to have a lot of awareness of the situation. And when you're a support, you need to react to people being bursted as if you're being bursted. Because you are their health. You're their heal skill. You need to keep them alive. So you need to watch where their damage is, what they're looking at, and where you need to be to stop them from doing their job. Let's see. And when the team fight inevitably moves, you lose it or you win it, or it's time to move out, or you have somewhere more important you need to be, like an objective or a losing fight somewhere else, you need to know when to kite out, when your team is stable, or when they're unstable in a way that you're just certain of. If someone is being ganked on a side node and you see an opportunity to run and support them, or at least resustain them, you shouldn't stay there. You don't offer much kill pressure at all. But if you see that opportunity, you might want to go for it. But again, it's all situational and depends. And like, I can't give you monthly winning support advice. I can just tell you what I do every day.
Someday.
Maybe someday. So rotations, kiting. Oh yeah, talked about leaving. Also anchoring. Sometimes, as a support, since you are technically, in quotations, a bunker, you can stay on objectives or nodes and wait for your team to come to you and hold it against one or more other players. But generally speaking, as far as I've heard, you don't want to hold anything if you can help it. Like, if it's absolutely vital, you stick your ass there and you start doing your crowd control and your healing. But if you're not in a team fight, you're probably not benefiting much. So anchoring is a bit riskier on a support than it is on, say, like a roamer, maybe. Or I mean, a duelist is supposed to bunker, but like, or anchor, but yeah, it is an option that's available to you. Realizing teammates, choosing which fight. Okay. So I think we can talk about what supports there are, which are, there are not many, really. I think there's more than there were in the past. Currently, one of the best supports, and has been for quite a while, Tempest is really potent. Partially because of, not Druid, partially because of their stability access, because Staff is a really, really, really good weapon. They have auras, you know, magnetic aura, very important reflex, just baked into the skill. They have
Shocking aura is busted.
They have a
It's
lot of
so good.
fucking immobilized. They have a lot of there's two different Tempest builds. I can talk about that later, but shocking aura, another extremely important aura that can completely turn the tides of a fight. It's a peeling weapon, it's a defensive skill, it's everything you'd ever want. And plus you actually give out a lot more chill than you might think you do because of how much chilling or frost aura there is. Which also reduces strike damage, so frost aura is a bit nuts. You have a lot of inherent cleanse, you affect a large area, you do it over a long, long, long distance. Remember that every AoE is 1200 range plus half of its radius away from you. So 300 radius frozen grounds at max range are affecting just a bit farther than their max. And that's really a huge boon. It has Windborne speed, so it has super speed access, a bunch of blinds. It heals a ton, it cleanses a ton, it has permanent prot, it has access to Stoneheart, so it has its own really good defensive abilities that it can do on command. Tempest is really good. There was also for a time, and might still be around, Heal Chrono, which generally focused on the longevity of a fight, or generally making sure your teammates are always ahead of the enemy in regards to what buttons they have available. Giving out Alacrity, very, very potent in PvP. For a while, people were running Relic of Rivers on builds that had nothing to do with like Relic of Rivers, just for the extra quarter second of a cooldown they'd get whenever they dodge. And that's like not that often. Whenever they dodge, they get a quarter of a second back. That is very potent at this like highest skill level. Chronomancer just gives a bunch of alacrity for free. They just do it. They are a bit frail though, apart from their distortion and their other buttons. And plus, when they press distortion, that's also, for the most part, their stability button. So there is a bit of a trade-off there as well. They have decent cleanse though with their shatters. Again, a lot of their healing and support happens next to them, which is why they have to be in the thick of the fight as well, which might make them vulnerable to more cleave. Chronomancers also don't do very much healing. They use Heal Mantra and Relic of the Flock because they don't have much burst healing at all. They make up for it by making their teammates insanely good. So if they're supporting, like, if you're arguably, like, in ranked, if you were supporting a really cracked teammate, like a scrapper or something that was devouring the other team, a Chronomancer would be more effective overall than, like, a Tempest, keeping them alive. If you were to give that scrapper a ton of, like, alacrity and you would dive every time they were diving. I'm not sure if it's still around. They've nerfed it a lot, and one of their key, like, weapons, which was Mesmer Spear, which allowed them to actually have a considerable amount of damage pressure, actually, was nerfed again, so maybe they're around still. It's a little more niche. There was also, for a time, before they gutted the crap out of its numbers, Support Spellbreaker, which mainly had a lot of might application for your team. It was very mobile, very annoying and tanky. It had, of course, full counter. And it actually healed a lot more than you think it did. Like, Tempest Shouts heal for about 1,000, maybe a little more, plus the regen. Back before the nerf, if you casted for Great Justice on Heal Spellbreaker, it'd heal your team for 3,000 fucking health. It was huge. Like, the burst reversal that they could do was just excellent. Staff was also a very good weapon for them. Almost everything it did healed. And you also had some shutdown in the forms of your interrupts immobilizing. You also had, well, again, full counter. Can't stress that enough. Full counter. You were tanky yourself. You were a pretty good bunker. And what else did they do? They removed boons. That's probably pretty important. They didn't really get to choose what boons they removed. And then there's, like...
Is it any good after the nerfs, or is it just
I haven't tried
washed
it yet. A lot of what made Spellbreaker good, honestly, I think, was Banner of Discipline, giving out, like, 10 seconds of resistance and the stability boost there. Also, they had, like, War Banner, which was an insane res.
And Stomp.
And Stomp. Very, very, like, compact, important skill that they had. Also, it was Warriors, so they had a ton of health and armor anyway. Let's see. There's also the 2 Guardians that are around as supports, which are less popular nowadays. I think the damage is just really high for them. Core Guard runs Shouts, very cleansy, kind of like an easier to punch in the face Tempest. But it has its own benefits. A lot of Aegis application, like way more stab if they want. Shouts are always instant cast, so you can use them on your allies or when you're being pressured. But Core Guard just gets killed really easily. It gets shut down. Necromancer's good right now, so they don't like that at all. But then there's Firebrand, which I think is still kind of going through the ringer. It might be good now. They buffed a lot of the page costs, and they just made it generally more agreeable. But it's still Firebrand, so it still dies a bit easier than Core Guard, I think. I don't think it's beating Tempest anytime soon. And then you have everything else that technically has a support build, but kind of falls short in different ways. Druid, for example, which is just switched to. I think.
No.
It has a lot of the important things that make a support good. It has a way to apply stability. It can give barrier. It can give, like, interrupts, shutdown. Has a lot of green numbers, a lot of healing. But it does.
DK.
Yeah. But it has a lot of revive potential. Probably more than any other class in the game. It can revive just consistently if it has all its buttons. But the problem that ends up happening is that it doesn't have much of a way to defend itself. It doesn't have, like, a block. Doesn't have very many reflects. It has Signet of Stone to reduce power damage to 0, but you still get hit by all the other bullshit in the air. It's just kind of doesn't have what it needs to support in a higher tier here. And plus, I don't think Druid Staff is, or I don't think Staff is like that useful of a weapon compared to what Ellie can do with Staff.
Yeah.
You have things like Scourge, which was nerfed to death, and also it's lost a lot of its niches already, and it kind of still doesn't have very many either because one, Necro doesn't even have a support weapon. Two, it's a barrier support, so it kind of doesn't do the healing you would want. Barrier is very situational, great to have, but again, it's not going to recover a team fight because eventually that barrier is going to go away, and then your guy just gets bursted again and dies. They don't have very much stab to give out. The what are they called? The little shades aren't that good anymore because they used to be way too good. And they don't have very many ways to protect themselves either. Like a blocky weapon, they don't have a shield, so they just end up getting focused and die as well. Not that great. Scrapper has a lot of healing as well, but it suffers from a distinct problem where it has too much of one thing and not enough of another. Shortbow is a very good support weapon on Engineer, but it doesn't really help it survive. Like, you wish you could take like shield or mace shield or something, or at least like toolbox to give you a block to stop you from getting focused, but really you kind of can't. Scrapper also has the problem where its most important button, that being the function gyro, which is a resurrection or a stomp, is also one of their only ways to give out stability, which kind of compresses their greatest skill into waste it this way or waste it that way. Either way, you're going to wish you had it. And also, I think they don't have very much CC. They kind of overload on healing and boons, but they don't really do much else. Good cleanse, though, at least, I guess. I don't remember any other supports off the top of my head.
Spectre's been seeing some play, right?
Right, that's the one I didn't write down. Spectre isn't really a good support because of it's mechanically designed like a horrid little creature. It was designed with a concept in mind, but none of the application. It is a single target, less single target now, but it's like a single target like barrier / heal support that has to jump through all of these hoops to do the thing that I do by pressing 6 and like a mouse button. Generally, you're gonna see things like Spectre more in roamer roles where they're heading to a team fight and resupporting it and getting a bunch of colonies off. Usually they'd be like Sage or Carrion, and then they'd go to a different point, pressure it. Generally, the thing that makes Spectre suck a lot is, I mean, one, the best way a thief survives is by disengaging, which, since you always want to be in a team fight as support, it's not the best mode of defense. You get focused easy still. A lot of Spectre's buttons are very difficult to get to, and they're not around for too long. It's really obtuse. Like, I don't think their Shroud gives any damage reduction, and it has such low max capacity, and it just immediately gets, like, beaten away by a single burst. So you get locked out to a bunch of your boons. It's better if you just you're able to just press your buttons and leave. In that sense, it's a lot like Duelist Tempest with daggers. And it is better as like an off healer or like a roamer. And they killed Ventari, so like Revenant's just sad. Yeah. Also Revenant Scepter, which is its dedicated support weapon, is just,
never existed.
It's never existed. It's a horrible designed piece of crap.
Let it rest in peace, honestly. It was fucking really annoying to play against.
It goes all the way to the top of the screen. It's just so nasty.
Yeah. Beyond saving.
Goes to the top
It's where,
and below
it's
the
where it
skill bar.
belongs.
Because when Ventari Rev is good, no one's having fun.
Yep.
Yeah. Alright. Alright. I think that's all the supports I would talk about. The meta will, of course, change over time. The meta, as of right now, has just changed and will probably change again. And then another update will come, and maybe Tempest gets knocked out to death. And Spellbreaker comes back. Probably not, because I hate Warrior. But, you know. Things will be different. Maybe Spectre will be insane. That just depends on the times. You have to keep up with that. But I can... Now, I can't talk at length about all the supports, though I have played all of them that kind of matter. They're kind of work in the current meta. But I can talk a lot about Tempest. And I figure maybe some people are here today because they want to know how to kill the crap out of a Tempest at any one point. Which I can oblige in doing. So... Tempest. How does Tempest support? All the ways described above. Generally with staff. Now, staff is a very interesting weapon. It has changed a lot since the core days. Tempest staff has a lot of ways to provide support from 1200 range, and it gives stab on a transmute. Mainly, that's what you're going to want to be looking for when you're supporting as Tempest, is being in water, auto-attacking, pressing all of your buttons, making sure to press Ice Spike into a water field or an ice field. Honestly, you can do either. And of course, going into Earth and giving out a ton of stability to keep your team alive and keep them running. When you are playing Tempest, let's see... There are two builds that people are generally going to be using. The first one I call Aura Share. It's the one that's kind of comes to mind first when most people think of Tempest, though it's not the one most people are using at the upper level. Aura Share involves this trait here, Powerful Aura. Applying an aura to yourself grants it to nearby allies. And then... Generally, you would also think to run Unstable Conduit, which gives you a respective aura depending on what attunement you're overloading. Which, by the way, is support Tempest only stun break. They don't usually take any stun breaks at all besides sitting on an overload they haven't casted yet and waiting to get stunned. That's important to remember. If you're fighting a Tempest, if they swap an attunement, they don't have a stun break for about 6 seconds, and if they pop an overload, they also don't have a stun break anymore. Except you should watch out for if they overload Earth, which would give them 3 stability just right off the bat, so they will be still pretty hard to CC at that point. But generally, Aura Share Tempest loves to run Unstable Conduit. Sometimes they will run gain stab and swiftness when they overload. This gives them a lot more swiftness to play around with while running around the map, and also the stability covers 1 CC during the very important overload that they are using to give out an aura. This is an easier build. It's kind of less complicated. You have more self-stability, and you can go around not holding the overloads for as long. And you'll get more auras, generally, that you like. You'll get another proc of Transmute Earth, that's even more stability. Most importantly, honestly, you'll get Shocking Aura, one of the best auras in the game, which would totally change the course of a fight, as I said. This is actually very hard to get on the other build. You can only get it through Rebound. More Frost Aura or Fire Aura. The problem with this build is that it's kind of low efficacy, and it loses a lot of its cleanse when it goes that way. Part of what makes a Tempest very strong is that it packages all of its support into one little spot. And part of why you don't need to run powerful auras is because you have a lot of ways to give auras outside of manually doing it yourself. For example, they changed Frozen Ground, the big giant ice field, to give Frost Aura on cast. So everyone in your party in this spot is going to get Frost Aura anyway. You can blast it, you can blast it again, or you can blast a water field. Either one, whichever you have up. Transmute Magnetic Aura, one of the best skills in the game. It gives 2 stab. Also is a blast, and it's delayed. So, technically, when you cast Transmute Earth, you can swap into a different attunement and immediately cast a 1/4 cast field, and it will pop it. So, Frozen Ground, 1/4 cast skill, will give out another Frost Aura in an area. Aura Share Tempest has its benefits. Access to Shocking Aura all the time, very good. But otherwise, it loses out against Shout Tempest. Now, Shout Tempest is specifically a build that runs this here, Cleansing Water. Cleanse conditions from allies you grant regen to. Combine that with the bottom trait, Invigorating Torrents, and your auras are giving out vigor and regen every time you apply them, which is a lot, especially with Frozen Ground. The reason it's Shout Tempest is because your main ways of applying auras outside of this are Aftershock, your heal skill, Rebound, and Feel the Burn, the 2-count Fire Shout. This is 2 cleanses because of the way the regen works and because you were running Relic of the Trooper. Very easy access to cleanse. You can be stunned and do it. You can be 600 radius away. You can do it through walls. You could do it under walls. I've healed people from the bottom of like Skyhammer's midpoint. You can just stand down here and cast up and it'll hit everyone for the most part. You do lose out on an important skill unless you choose to take it anyway, but then you lose out on efficacy. Lightning Flash. Now, Tempest is a slow support. Supports want to roam 2-team fights. They want to disengage sometimes. Ellie's best and only real skill at doing this is Lightning Flash. A 900 range blink doesn't even break your stun. But this is a lifesaver. It can really help you out in a lot of situations. I don't tend to use it because I really like to carry team fights very hard. I like to make sure that they're good. And if I need to roam somewhere, I'll just do it quickly and better, I guess. The other important part of Invigorating Torrents, which is honestly probably one of the sleeper best parts of a Tempest in general, and why I think Aura Share is kind of a throw build, is Latent Stamina, which it gives you vigor. You and allies get vigor every time you tune the water, and every time you give anyone vigor, they get 15 endurance. That's about a third of a dodge that you're giving out every time there's an aura. Every time you swap the water, it's a third of a dodge. If you blast like Frozen Ground, that's basically a little over half of the dodge there. If you blast it twice, then that's a full dodge you just gave to somebody. And like everyone in the radius of your auras is getting it. Like, you'd be surprised how many more dodges you can give to yourself and your team by running a full rotation of auras. Then, of course, your Grandmaster is just, you know, your auras heal. They recently nerfed this. They don't like it, but it's one of the main sources you have for healing. Let's see. The other part of Tempest that kind of keeps it afloat and is mainly, I think, what makes it broken in regards to the damage that's in the meta is that they run Earth. Now, Tempest has a passive where it gains more efficacy from protection. Instead of getting 33% effectiveness from protection, they take 40% less damage, or a little bit under. You can pair this with the fact that they have permanent protection, and they're giving their team permanent protection, because auras are giving it too. They have a little bit of concentration just from being a Tempest, which is very rare in PvP modes, or this one at least. They take 7% less strike damage when they're attuned to Earth. They get barrier when they attune to Earth, and they cripple, which I guess sometimes matters. And then on top of all of that, if you're within 360 range of them, they're taking 10% less damage again. And to top it all off, most of the time they're running Stoneheart, which they have changed since its in inception, but generally, if they swap to Earth, you can't crit them. Critting is a lot of damage. They cleanse just fine on their own, so power damage is really the only way to get through to them. And when they swap into Earth, they're essentially... They're not immune to damage, but they're taking so much less of it altogether. But only for 4 seconds when they swap into Earth. And when they leave it, they get another 1 second. I don't know why. But like you can kind of use that to parry bursts, I guess. This leads to a different important topic. When you're trying to kill Tempests, you want to make sure they don't have Earth available. So if they swap into Earth, you know you can't burst them. For one, they get 1 stack of stab just from doing that. But also, they have all those other benefits of being in Earth to reduce their power damage. They have protection, so they're taking 40% less on top of that. And they have Stoneheart, so they can't be crit. When they leave Earth, you have about a 9-second window where they could just get totally eaten to death by any sort of power damage. It's important to watch when a Tempest is switching in and out of Earth. They may stay in it for quite a while to start stacking stability on their team, but once they leave it, you can beat the crap out of them. This is also important to remember when they overload Earth, if they have to, if they're an aura share, or if they have to do it to break a stun, or they need stability to secure a stomp or something. When you overload an attunement, it goes on cooldown for 20 whole seconds. They don't have to leave the attunement right away, but the whole thing is on cooldown no matter what. That's 15 seconds without Stoneheart. That is a huge window to start killing them. If you can force a Tempest to stun break when they're in Earth, all the better. But I mean, obviously, really hard. That's where all their stability is. But if you can like corrupt it or something, that's a very important skill. I want to talk to my Orcher, that thing. I don't know, I guess there's staff as well. But I've talked about that. The Ice Field, Healing Rain cleanses 3 conditions. Every single pulse in a pulse is 3 times over 6 seconds. So, like, the team is immune to condies while that thing's pumping. Geyser, hard to aim, but pretty good. Oh, I haven't talked about Glyph. One of the most important skills in the game. Glyph of Renewal. You run a Command Revive. That Command Revive changes effects based on what attunement you're in. Important to remember, it has 900 range, which is less than your staff has. I whiffed a fucking revive yesterday because I tried to revive someone from up on the balcony of Kylo at 1200 range.
Damn.
Completely.
You play with instant cast?
There's a reason for that, yes. So, there's a difference between instant cast and fast with range indicator. And generally, fast with range indicator is better if you're not as familiar with your weapons radiuses, but it's a bit slower. But there is a bonus. Well, it's like literally cast slower slightly. There's a bit more of a delay, but there is a bonus in that you can cast something while you're running away, and it'll keep casting at that exact spot. It locks the target to that spot. Glyph of Renewal is a very important skill to always hit. You don't want to miss it at all. You can cast it while running away, getting out of range of other people's CC, getting out of range of like damage, and since every one of the attunements attunement of air, will teleport a downed body to you when it revives. So this will get them even further out of trouble if they're in the middle of a whole team. The problem with this is that, well, it's kind of locked to your reticle. You can't cast it over cliffs, you know. You can't cast anything over cliffs if you can't see it. The difference with instant cast is that any skill that is retargetable, that is most of these skills really, will go to where your cursor is last when the bar completes. So if I cast Ice Spike here and then I move it over there, see, it's not retargetable. But if I cast Healing Rain over there and I move my cursor over here, it goes to where it ends. It's important to know which skills do that, because you don't want to cast something and try to move it around, but it just stays where it was. I believe Geyser does it too? Yeah. This is most important, and you would be running instant specifically for renewal, because renewal is retargetable. If, say, there is a down person below Skyhammer down here, and I'm over here, I can't start reviving them with fast with range indicator until I get to this ledge and then press the button. If I have instant on, I can start casting it anywhere up here and just make sure my cursor's over them when I get there. This extends the range you're able to start casting it. It lets you cast it around corners, down through holes. It lets you cast it up at stuff. It really raises your versatility when it comes to reviving someone. But the problem is that you have to always be within that 900 radius when you start it. There's 4 different things that Glyph of Renewal does. When you're in fire, Glyph of Renewal will give you a buff for 15 seconds, where the next time you go down, you'll actually get revived after a couple seconds. This isn't usually that useful. If you're getting down in a fight, like immediately after someone else, you're probably not winning the fight. And also, if you like pre-cast Glyph on nothing just to give yourself the revive, you're still probably not winning the fight. It's probably a bad situation. But it's something you can use sometimes. It's a tool to keep around. Water is what you mainly want to be casting your Glyph on. Water makes it so that they revive with 100% health. That's usually a lot of fucking health. Someone with like 17,000 max HP, difference between coming up with 8,000 and 17,000 is a large fucking number. Air, as I've said, teleports the target to your feet when you revive them. And Earth is a multi-revive with a larger radius. But also, if you have to revive multiple people, the fight's kind of scuffed anyway. Unless you can immediately press a bunch of buttons to stabilize it. Like if you're coming back into a losing mid-fight and you revive 2 people that are down and they haven't cleaved them out fast enough, that can change the whole game. That's Glyph. Rebound technically has a revive mechanic on it. It makes it so that if you were to take a lethal blow, you heal for about 4,000 or 5,000 and you get an aura. That doesn't matter. I don't care about that at all. I almost never cast it to do that. What matters is that it gives like 6 seconds of stability and an aura when it ends. Like when the duration of it ends. This is the only way Shout Tempest gets access to Shocking Aura. So I always try to make sure when I'm covering someone with stability, like for example if I leave Earth and I want to overload water or fire or something, and I know I don't have access to stability for a while, I'll cover that, or I'll cover my team's burst or whatever, or their peel, with rebound, and then I can overload freely. And I always want to end in air if I can help it, because then everyone gets the best aura in the game. Let's see. Yeah. Okay. So, kind of a closing note here, but Aura Share Tempest loves to overload. That's where it gets most of its auras. Most of its slower healing comes from there. Shout Tempest, since it has no stun breaks and it's kind of more frail, it holds the overloads, of course, when you are in the middle of a fight or when you can just free cast. It'll hold those until it needs to, and then it'll stun break. I think that the highest priority overload is air, because once you press all your skills in air, you can leave it pretty freely, and also it's a very high damaging overload. A lot of the times you'll see me pre-casting air, like right before a fight, right on the outskirts of a fight, and then running in to cleave range with it, so that this starts hitting people with, you know, a lot of vuln, gives out a lot of fury. Earth, I never want to overload ever, but if I have to, I have to. I don't want to be locked out of Stoneheart for that long. Water, I think, is also a pretty good overload, but you are losing access to water attunement for quite a while if you do it. But if you need the healing, like, the difference between like having water available in 9 seconds or having a dead teammate is pretty self-explanatory. If you got to keep people alive, you do it. It does make you a good target though. In fire, you almost never even want to be in the first place. You do it to cast the blind, you do it to about face and move around with burning retreat, and then you probably put down lava font and leave. But if you're cleaving a body, you can overload fire, and it is a lot of damage on the point and a lot of might. What else? Eruption is a delayed blast finisher. Put stuff on it before it blows up. Aftershock's a blast finisher. Ice Spike's a blast finisher. Technically, Overload Water, I believe, puts a water field on you? Am I wrong? I might be wrong. I'm probably wrong. Yeah, I think that's about it for the overview of it. Is there any questions about anything I talked about?
How much do I spam Meteor Shower?
If you can help it. If you're in a good spot to cast Meteor Shower, you can cast it.
Yay!
It's not much damage, but
Well, it's
What
just
kind of
a
a
fun
situation would you pick Vigor Tempest or Aura Tempest?
Generally, I think Vigor is better a lot of the time, especially as a solo support. If you're a duo support, I think it's definitely more viable to pick Unstable Conduit and then Aura Sharing, because the Shocking Aura will end up helping you more than the extra cleanse and heal if you already have a lot of cleanse and heal on the team. It's also an easier build if you're starting to learn Tempest. It is easier to control. You're more of a threat. If a thief jumps on you and you just like start overloading air and they like try to day spam you and it doesn't go through, and then suddenly you're standing in 5,000-6,000 damage of shock, they really can't do much to you. Oh yeah. Also, a different choice you can make with your traits instead of earth is you can run fire. Now this is not that meta. This is only really something you want to do against really Condi heavy comps, like 3, 4, 5 of them are Condi, and even then, if they have a really good power like Roamer, you still probably want to run earth. But if you run Smothering Auras, which cleanses 1 Condi on aura application and then 2 when you transmute it, you can nullify a lot of Condi builds really quick. Plus you get a bunch of blind, plus you can run like Sage and get a bunch of damage yourself, or you could run Cleansing Fire and just have more protection against that. And I think this build is probably better if you're against Condi on Aura Share than, say, going like the Vigor build with it. But it's like one of those micro choices. It's like a team comp thing.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. And also, honestly, there's not many choices between like utilities you can run. A lot of these aren't as good as Aftershock, Lightning Flash, Feel the Burn, Glyph. I have in the past seen people run Tornado, but that's, you know, probably not as good as the Stab anymore, but Tornado is a good initiator, or knocks a foe away from being revived. Because remember, that's another thing with instant cast Glyph. If someone knocks away the guy you're trying to revive, just follow them with your cursor and it'll still get them. You know, Guardian Signet.
Oh, okay.
Guardian Signet of Mercy is not retargetable. So if you knock it out of a Signet of Mercy, they're not able to chase it. They have to stow it. And sometimes you run, if you're weird, you run, yeah, Rebound didn't used to give stab, so it wasn't that useful. And sometimes you can run Glyph of Elementals, but you're probably a Duelist Tempest if you're doing that. The Ice Elemental actually heals for a shit ton when you press its skill, but you have to be next to it, I think. And you have enough healing as it is, really. Okay. You can either run that or that, I don't really know. Anything else? That
was my only question.
So right off the bat, game starts. We're up against a team that has a lot of damage. You have a Mirage, Reaper. You don't really know what type of Mirage it is yet. Con to your power. It's probably power, but yeah. This turned out to be a Con DDH, but a lot of the time you're going to expect power. Scrappers, scrap. We thought this was going to be a support. It wasn't. It was a duelist. So we're going to see what it looks like when a team like this doesn't have a dedicated support. They die.
Spoilers.
Yeah. First things first. Sometimes people will overload air at the beginning of the game, actually. Can I make that stop coming up? Probably not. They'll overload air and blast in it. I don't think that's that necessary. I think that's a cooldown you can save just to, have it going in the mid. Windborne speed gives 12, 13 seconds of swiftness when you cast it. It's perfectly fine for a rollout, especially on a map where mid is so close like this. Here, O is calling smoke field at stairs, so I'll swap to water, do an ice spike, transmute earth. Pretty valuable cooldown, but more stealth duration is very good. Another thing you're going to want to realize here, if you're playing Ellie or support Tempest, you can support anywhere your spells reach. So I fucked up the jump here and just walked down here like a dumbass, but I was still able to support everyone up here because I could throw my AoEs up on them. But I start getting pressured. So since I already left Earth, I want stability for my team and for myself. I cast Rebound there. I don't save it. You don't need to save that cooldown as much as you think you might. And then I start continuing to stabilize this fight. We kind of get pulled back here. We go back in. And all I'm doing is I'm just keeping green bars high. I'm keeping green bars high, putting random CC on the point in front of people. And I'm making sure everyone has as much stability as I can give. I'm repositioning myself here because I didn't like being that close to their spawn, probably. You'll notice since they didn't have a support, once they started crumbling, they never stopped. They didn't really have a way to pull out of that landslide fall. So they might have, if I wasn't there supporting, they might have won that fight. They had a lot of damage, but since there was a support to stabilize it, they couldn't crack through, and eventually they ran out of defensive cooldowns and went down. Let's see. And then here, I guess this happens a lot in the game, but you'll notice that since we have map control here, they're going to have a lot of respawns that are coming from their spawn over in this corner. I want to look and rotate between mid and far. This is where the team fights are going to be, because their respawns are going to be here. I come up here to reinforce Homage, who is the duelist dueling 2 at that point. He needed a bunch of health. As a support, you don't contribute much to kill pressure, so I was just there to heal and then go back mid and make sure nothing bad happens to mid while I'm gone. We usually have a Reaper there, so they should have enough Shroud to hold out for a while if I have to run. You'll notice that they have, I believe, I don't remember what class it was. They have someone decapping home a lot this game. Not as important as winning the team fights, really. They're allowed to take home sometimes. Now I notice our duelist is fighting a necro and there's a fight on mid. This fight on mid is way more volatile. A duelist's job is to duel. I don't have to be there. If I come down here, I can reinforce it. Make sure that nothing goes wrong here, and whatever happens to the duelist, they can kite out, which they are. They were 2v1 for a while. And they're kind of out of position here. They don't really have much staying power, so as soon as I show up and resustain all my guys, they start folding. But I make a mistake here. It's just an awareness thing. I don't notice that Homage was running towards me and he went down up here. I could have ran back sooner and healed him, but I was overloading on that guy. Here's a good situation where you don't need to use your glyph all the time. In fact, you should save it as much as possible. That guy gets instantly turned into scrap metal. I start running... Right, because metal is on home trying to defend it, and there's two there. So I notice there's a fight like everywhere on the map, but I want to peel from metal. I don't think he has much peeling potential. I want to at least get him out of there. And then I can run back mid. But this takes too long, and I kind of mess up. Post gets down on mid. And now my objective isn't to turn this fight. My objective is to get, like, out of there. He doesn't have very many cooldowns left, probably. We're already losing the fight. He goes down eventually. I cast Rebound to secure this revive in case anyone tries to target me with stability or with a CC. Probably not that necessary. I still want to leave, is the thing. I still don't want to be in this fight. I want to kite out, wait for a Reaper to come back. My job isn't to, like, it's just peeling. I was peeling. But then we get a good turn because, again, they don't have supports. So if they're running out of, like, health, they're running out of cooldowns. And our Reaper comes back in, they have all their cooldowns. We lasted long enough to turn the fight. There's a cleave war, I pressed the wrong button. In situations like that, you just press whoever you're trying to revive on your team template up here, and that way it'll always target them with F, so I don't press stomp on some goon. We keep winning the fight, though. This is kind of a good example of what a support is doing for the team fight. More stability. We're not quite out of the woods yet, but we have a lot of kills, and then we're out of the woods. The Tempest is tanky, but again, this isn't a support Tempest, this is a duelist. So they can only do so much for their team, and they mostly just try to kite out of there. All the while, up here, stuff's going on at crossing, but it looks like we have map control now, and you can expect a lot of revives coming down from their spawn. The team fight's going to be up here. I'm going to put CC down in a crappy spot. I want to go up and heal Homage up here, but there was a fight that got split off down there. I'm not good at commentating. It's just happening, right?
I saw kill, I go kill. There we go.
That's fair.
That's what I did.
They're mostly pushed back into home, which we don't own, but it doesn't really matter. We still have map control. They're going to bring the fight to mid here, and I want to make sure that I'm there. Carries like Reapers, Condi Reapers, very good to stand near if you have a choice. Oh, fuck. Yeah. Sometimes bursts are fast, and I didn't have my revive. And at this point, the fight is so lost, I'm trying to get out. You do want to start kiting out in that situation if you're 4v3, 4v5, whatever. Metal unfortunately went the wrong way and he got focused, but it let me run back to my duelist who was covering home. So I'm back with my team. We can start moving out from here, choosing where we want to go. Stillness and Tranquility are coming up soon, so I'm kind of focusing on this middle portion here. Just kind of skirmishing with this DH, trying to get cooldowns out of him. Casting Overload, I guess, just out of impulse, if anything jumps on me. At this point, Metal takes that, and I want to go down. I'm better in a team fight anyway. And I think what happens... Yep. Post said he was coming down from mid. I wanted to peel for him in case he needed it. And then I'm going to bring my heals down into the fight itself. Now this is where our entire team is, so... Like, eventually we win the fight, and they just trickle down there and try to stop us from taking the buff, but we shouldn't all linger here. If this was a ranked game, all 5 of us would have been down here for like 5 minutes, but since this is a coordinated game, a lot of us try to move out. This battle is basically not one we can lose, but we don't want to lose the rest of the map while we're capping that buff. This will put us in a decent situation even if it takes any longer, and it probably will since a lot of us left. I stay around, keep mid. Now we're starting to get passive points. I see that Scourge isn't, or that Reaper isn't going for mid. I want to go back down to this fight down here, which was a great time to do it because now 4 of them are here. They're not going to take the points we just capped up there, and I can stabilize this fight again. Scrapper comes in late. I do all my stab stuff, but too late for the blast gyro. And again, the fight stabilized. We'll probably take Trank at this point, so we're running back up to... At this point, I would probably anchor mid while we cap that, or I go up and see where their respawns are in case they rush our duelists. They don't. They kind of linger around over here. I know my team's going to be coming out of bottom shortly, so I will... If I'm in a fight, I won't be in it for long alone. Their DH runs in Suicide's mid. Not a great choice, but since it's a DH, look at how much damage they do. It's a burn DH. Very important that I'm like giving out all my cleanses in this kind of fight. They start trickling in as well. I don't actually have very many heals right now because of what I had to heal through. So I'm going to end up auto-attacking, just stalling out, doing chip heals, kind of like you would do chip damage. Now there's a Mirage free casting, but at this point I have Overload heal. Another important aspect of Overloads is that you can like use them to stretch out the time you're waiting for other cooldowns. We're kind of losing up on crossing, but I don't think I could have rotated out of that fight. So now that that fight is secured, I can peel for Metal here, who's just getting totally demolished and is about to get more demolished by the respawns. Aftershock is immobilized. Very cool. I put down more walls to make sure they can't get past us. I give super speed so that Metal successfully kites out. And you can see kind of where I am positioned in this fight. I am positioned towards the exit. The enemy is positioned towards where they're coming in, and all the rest of my team is on the point. They have to go past the effective skill range of my team to get to me. So that's a pretty good way to put it. And also, my whole team is still in my heal range when I'm over here. And when I need to really start healing, I'll stay out of cleave range, and then I'll come back in, give out stab. And the stab is really so important. The guy that just got hit by a wall and got smacked back, you bet he wishes he had stab. Let's see. They took the rest of the map while we were holding mid, and they took stillness, but we held mid and killed them all, so now we have map control. I come up here trying to help leave this guy down, but mid, there's still a fight on mid, I think. I think one showed up. Yeah, they're coming in now. I was never in that, like, I was always within 2 seconds of casting on mid, so I can kind of just roam about a little bit there. Our duelist is taking home now, and their respawns are where the team fight is. I can't really get up to where O went because of the way their team was positioned. I would have had to run through a lot more skills to get to him, so I'm just like, alright, you take care of yourself. But by this point, mid is a win condition. We just bunker on it. I put CC on them to keep them from getting there for a little longer. I heal off the point. Give out cleanses, give out stabs. When they get knocked off, I get on. And when they're on, I think I want to get off. But we just win.
Why did you have your personal target on post?
Oh,
Yeah, you didn't go over personal target, I don't think.
that is a good question. So post is the Reaper.
Likes to die.
The post likes to die. But also, he is the Condi Reaper. He's not very mobile, but he's a very strong team fighter. Generally, what happens is I will end up putting my personal target over whoever is like the strongest team fighter I want to default to most of the time. So in this case, it's the Condi Reaper. Sometimes it might be like just like if it's in ranked, it's just whatever the strongest DPS is, because holding a point in ranked is a lot harder than, say, oh hey, I got like one of the best Mirages in the game, I'm just gonna follow him around and heal him whenever he gets kills. I've won games like that. It's just whoever I want to kind of default to going back towards. And generally Post did a great job holding mid in this kind of game. So it's that.
Okay.
Also, I'm pretty sure even from down here, my Transmute Earth, which is supposed to have 150 radius, gives stab to everyone. Yep. Transmute Earth has 180 radius, but it doesn't have a Y axis, I guess. So that's pretty cool.